Do you know the difference between the quit and the close methods in Selenium WebDriver? In today's video, we're going to learn just that. Hi, I'm Marco Cruz, and welcome to automateNow. Let's dive in.
And here we are on automateNow.io. We're going to scroll down till we find this Twitter button. Notice what happens when I click this Twitter button. A new window opens up. Now let's say that we want to close this window. In the last video, I showed you how we can switch to this window to perform operations on it. In today's video, we're going to learn how we can close this window. Now let's go to the code. We're going to take a look at this base page class. This is the place where we keep all of our common methods. Notice that here we have a method for closing the browser. Let's create a new method for closing a window. And here we're going to say driver.close. Now let's look at the main difference between these two methods. If you ever want to know what this method does, you can hold the Control key and click on this method. Another way to do this is to right click on the method's name, select Go To, and select Declaration. And here we find the method. If we scroll up here, we're going to see that this is the WebDriver interface, and it is part of Selenium package. Now back to the close method. If we look at the description for this method, it says that it closes the current window, quitting the browser if it's the last window currently open. Right below it, we find the quit method, and this tells us that it quits the driver, closing every associated window. So when we call this close method, all we're doing is closing the browser's window. But when we call quit, we're going to be closing every browser window along with the WebDriver. A key thing to remember here is that we only call quit when we are done testing, but we can call close at any time when we want to close a window. So going back to base page class, we now have a method that allows us to close the window. Now let's go ahead and create a test. And for that, we're going to go to the sandbox test class. And here we have our test. I've called this one test close second window. So we said that we were going to be clicking on that Twitter button, and then we're going to close that Twitter login window. Conveniently enough, we have methods in this other test here that we can reuse. So let's go ahead and copy this and paste them down here. So what we're doing here, first we click on that Twitter button, and next we switch to that new window. Recall from the previous video that I said that before we can send commands to the new window, we first need to switch to that window. And that's what we're doing here. Next, we're going to call that method that we just created in the base page class. And we're going to say close window. Now we can run our test to see if it's working properly. I'm going to go ahead and put a breakpoint right here, right before the window is closed. Now let's go ahead and run this in debug mode. And now the test execution has stopped at the breakpoint. If we look here, we see that we have two windows open. This window and this window. I'm going to click this button here to execute this line of code, which should close the second window. So let's click it. If we go back here, we see that there's only one window open, which is the main automateNow.io website. The second Twitter login window has now been closed. Now let's think about how we can verify that the second window has been closed. One way that we can do this is by getting the window handles, as we learned from the previous video. This will return the number of windows that are opened. So let's go back to the base page class. And here we're going to create a method. And we're going to say public, and it will return an integer. We're going to call this one get number of open windows. And here we're going to say return driver.getWindowHandles. And this is going to return us a set of strings, which are basically alphanumeric IDs for each of the open windows. And then we're going to get the size of this set by calling .size. Now we can go back to our test, and we can say int number of open windows is equal to get number of open windows. Now we can perform an assertion and say assert equals. And we're going to assert that the number of open windows is equal to 1, because we only expect one window to remain open after we call this method here to close the second window. So just to recap here, we're going to click on the Twitter button, a new window will open, and we're going to switch to it. Then we're going to close that window, and then we're going to call this method get number of open windows. We expect to only have one. That's why we're going to make an assertion here to make sure that the number of open windows is only 1. Let's go ahead and run this test one more time. And our test was successful. Now that you know when to use driver.close, there is one more thing I would like to mention before ending this video, and that is about the quit method. Recall that I said that we only call quit when we're done testing. So if we look over here, we have this base test class here. And in here, we have a setup method and a teardown method. In the setup method, we're doing several things such as navigating to the home page. And in the teardown, we're closing the browser. If we take a look at this method here, we're going to see that this is calling driver.quit. That means that we're completely done testing and we no longer need the WebDriver or the browser. I hope you enjoyed this video. In the next video, we're going to see how we can work with multiple window tabs. See you then.